Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Stesha Brandon, the Literature and Humanities Program Manager at the Seattle Public Library. And as we begin today, I just want to take a minute to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. Here in Seattle, these are the traditional unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders past, present, and future, and we thank them for their stewardship of this land. And, we're a library, so if you wanted to learn more about the history of the First Peoples that were here, we have lots of resources. So you could learn a lot about the Indigenous folks that made their home here before contact, and then you can also learn about colonization, too. Welcome to today's program, celebrating Four Cultures Poetry in Public program. I have a couple quick announcements before we get started. So many folks made today's program possible. We're grateful to our series sponsor, the Seattle Public Library Foundation, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, and the Seattle Times for generous support of library programs. And thank you to the folks who made Poetry in Public possible. That program is presented by Four Culture, King County Metro, and Sound Transit. I wanted to mention that we have assistive listening devices available. They are on the table with the blue cloth here. If you find that you need one, you can just give me a little wave and I'll bring you one. You got a survey as you came in, and we appreciate you taking a minute to fill the survey out at the end of the program. I read all of them, and it helps shape what happens here at the library. So we appreciate you taking the time. Today is the second in our spring guest curator series, which invites local luminaries to curate programs at the library. This spring, we're doing something a little bit different by partnering with Four Culture to celebrate their Poetry in Public program. Their poet planner, Laura Day, and 6 community liaisons worked with members of the public to create poems around the theme Places of Landing. And today we're delighted to host poet planner Laura Day, community liaison Sierra Nelson, and 4 community poets. Our format will include introductions from both the poet planner and community liaison, and poetry from the liaison and community poets. And finally, we will have a few minutes at the end for an open mic at the close of the event. We have a little sign-up sheet there, or you can just raise your hand and let us know at the end if you would like to read. And we are just asking that folks limit their reading to about 3 minutes or so. So joining us today, we have Laura Day, poet planner for the Poetry in Public Places of Landing project. That's so many P's. Laura is a poet and a public school teacher, and she studied creative writing at the University of Washington and the Institute of American Indian Arts. She's the author of the collections Instruments of the True Measure, winner of the Washington State Book Award, and Tributaries, which was a winner of the 2016 American Book Award, and also the chapbook, The Tecumseh Motel. Her work has appeared in anthologies, New Poets of Native Nations, and Effigies 2. And she also is in this year's Seattle Reads anthology, You Are Here, Poetry in the Natural World. Her poem, Bad Wolf, is included in that anthology. And actually, just we'll do a little shout out. Laura is going to be talking with the other local contributor, Cedar Saigo, on May 20th here at the library. So we hope you'll join us for that as well. Laura is the current poet laureate of Redmond and a recent writer in residence at Hugo House as well. A member of the Eastern Shawnee tribe, she received a Native American Arts and Cultures Fellowship and has been a Maid at Hugo House Fellow and a Jack Straw Fellow. We are also going to be joined by the youth community liaison, Sierra Nelson. Sierra is a poet, multimedia performance and installation artist, and teacher, bringing her extensive collaboration experience and love of marine sciences to her artistic and teaching practices. Sierra's books include The Lacrimose Report and I Take Back the Sponge Cake. She is the editor of Three Hearts, an anthology of cephalopod poetry. And for over 25 years, Sierra has facilitated generative creative writing workshops with students as young as 3 years old to elders and across diverse settings, including schools, hospitals, libraries, and parks. So let's give a warm welcome to both Laura and Sierra, and they're going to take it away. All
right, my name's Laura Day. Thank you so much for that really gracious introduction. And thanks so much to our readers, our audience, and of course, I want to acknowledge our audience who may be tuning in from home or who may get the chance to see this beautiful reading at a later time. Welcome to today's celebration of poetry and poets. I know I'm really looking forward to hearing from our poets. And I also want to encourage folks that we will have some time at the end of our program for folks to read a poem if they'd like to, which we would love to hear. I'd like to speak for a few minutes about the process of curating and facilitating and working together in collaboration with all of these incredible poets. And I'm going to particularly highlight this session's kind of iteration of youth poetics. So poetry in public is something that our community has enjoyed for many, many years. It used to be called Poetry on Buses, kind of went on a long hiatus and came back as Poetry in Public. When I took on this role, there were a few kind of elements that I really wanted to emphasize. So I entered into the position of poet planner, and this has been a 2-year process, and I'm just concluding and really looking forward to see what a new iteration will come in the future. But I had 3 strong intentions, 3 pieces that I really wanted to bring to this program and to collaborate around. So the first was to really represent the scope of the county. So this particular program serves all of King County, and it serves all of the tribal nations and lands that historically moved through, on, or around King County. I grew up in rural King County, so I grew up in the Snoqualmie Valley. And one thing I'm really proud to report is that this iteration had the greatest reach historically. So we did workshops and had poetry represented in almost every established community in King County, which is something we've never done before. And I think as our guest poets will attest, but also as the poems attest, we had a lot of representation from rural parts of the county that we don't often see. So I was really pleased to be able to bring my particular background in that way. When I was growing up, the Snoqualmie Valley was very rural, and I didn't have any access to arts education. So we got to do workshops in my hometown, which is North Bend, and that felt really rewarding. I also wanted to honor multilingualism. So speakers of multiple languages, the deep, rich linguistic tradition of poetry and of our region. Hello, welcome, folks. And I'm really pleased to report that we had a wide diversity of languages represented, and we published poems in translation. We published poems that were hybrids of different languages. So it was a really incredible experience. But when I reflect upon my kind of dearest memories of this particular tenure, it's certainly youth poetry and poetics. So for the first time, partly because my background is as a middle school educator, we were able to include youth poets as one of the communities of emphasis. And we were able to represent more of youth poetry than has ever been published in a public poetry project. So that was a huge win, and it's a win for all of us because the poems that came out of the workshops, the classes, the individual young people who elected to write and share their work, I think is some of the richest, most beautiful and dynamic poetry I've ever read. So I am going to share one with you in a moment, just because I want to acknowledge how beautiful and rich the poetry tradition of young writers is, and how wonderful it was to see it come to fruition as part of this project. So I'll take a moment to talk a little bit about the theme, because it connects to some of the things you perhaps heard in the introduction. Part of the poet planner's role is to act as a co-creator of an overarching theme. I came into this position with a strong interest in honoring and recognizing the way that in our region of Cascadia, most of our cities, our landing spaces like docks and transit centers, and certainly our roads, are all directly superimposed upon Indigenous villages. So I considered places of landing both to be an acknowledgement of the layers of history that undergird our daily movements, but I also thought about what we might consider our emotional connection through poetry. So poetry can land us in many different places of emotion, of connection, from sort of the calm centered introspection to a real justified rage. All of those things we can see represented in poetry. And those are the two kind of pieces that went into my initial vision. And then, of course, it was shaped by being able to collaborate with liaisons. I got a chance to work with incredible community leaders who created workshops, facilitated and did outreach for every kind of community of emphasis. And I want to take a moment to encourage folks here. On our table, you can get one of our tangibles, so our community benefits. I think we've printed thousands of these, and they've gone to, I know personally, at least 20 different schools, 5 different districts, lots of different places. And this particular packet, it encourages you to write a poem based on place. So based on a landscape, a place that you visit often, your home. So it encourages a poem based on really noticing and honoring the place that you're in. But I think it's a great visual symbol of the way that collaboration around things like poetry and the poems that you'll hear tonight, it often has these rich, deep root systems. So if you, when you take your booklet, look carefully at the front, the design theme, so the way that the font looks and the actual imagery across the front, this was actually co-created with a number of different community members and groups. And this is the visual that we landed on. So if you've seen this kind of visual, it's what's on the buses and transit places where these poems are created. And the backstory of this is representatives from the poetry community, from all of our different language communities, youth and Indigenous poets came together with artists and with a community-based design firm. And we wanted to create an aesthetic that reflected not only what transit looks like, the Indigenous roots of our kind of area, and even the kind of technological connections. So when I look at this, I'm really warmly reminded of how when you put so many different worldviews together, you create this beautiful kind of woven aesthetic. So in this pamphlet, this kind of pixelated or woven, we wanted to reflect traditional Salish cedar weaving, but we also wanted it to have a slightly pixelated look like coding. And then ultimately, and this is from a youth representative, and this is one of my favorite kind of stories, is one of our youth representatives said, I like this because it looks like the way the rain looks when you're looking out the window of a bus. So I think it's a beautiful kind of metaphor. It's a visual symbol of how poetry often, it looks like one person standing and reading or one book that you might purchase. There are books to purchase as well, so please feel free to do so. But often it's such a community-driven kind of beautiful woven aesthetic movement and meaning. So I'd like to encourage folks, please take a booklet. We have a pretty ample supply, so if you'd like to take one home, of course, please do so. Get a hold of me if you need more, because I've got a ton in my car as well. And I'd love to see these go out. I'd love to think of them as sort of seeds to make even more poetry in the community. So I like to share that story because it's a real act of courage to share your poem. And it's such an honor when I go out and I'm on the bus and I see a poem that somebody has written and shared with the community. It's so enriching. It's both an intellectual honor to read it and also, I think, an emotional honor to know that somebody has shared something that can feel vulnerable or that can make someone else feel a little bit less alone. So I'll talk for just a little bit more about the workshop process, because I'm going to share a poem that a community of young writers wrote and then published. And I want to use it as a way to honor how poetry can be collaborative, interactive, and just to kind of report how you don't have to be on your own to write a beautiful poem. So we did youth outreach throughout the county. I got to visit about 20 different schools, and Sierra and I got to do a series of really incredible multimedia workshops at the Redmond Teen Center. And I got to do workshops in the Snoqualmie Valley as well. Now, at one of our workshops, which was in Redmond, Sierra had invited a kind of like a printmaking component. So folks got to come in, we went through a poetry workshop, and then we got to make our own prints. And it opened this kind of space of visual art and literary art. And we got this incredibly rich kind of outpouring of beautiful imagery. And many of the poems that the workshop participants wrote ended up being selected and elevated on our poetry in public on buses and transit places. So what I'd like to do, because this is such a distinct memory for me, and I have kind of a special place in my heart for this particular poem because I remember watching it come together, is I'm going to share a poem that was written at one of the workshops. So this poem is listed under anonymous because it was created by, I think, about 12 different poets working together after they had participated in the workshop and created these letter presses that reflected all kinds of different options and ideas of what landing represented to each of them. So this is a poem that you might still be able to find on a bus. We still, we have a running text group of every time we still see a bus that has these. But another place that these poems continue to be highlighted is at the For Culture's office, which is in Pioneer Square. There's an interactive presentation of all of the poems, and that will go on for quite a few months through the summer. So I do encourage folks, maybe if you are in the area of Pioneer Square, to have a visit because it's quite beautiful. So this poem is called Landing is Like. Stopping, breaking, heels clicking on the tiled floors, steps echoing as I run to meet someone, find something, eagerly with a smile. Ankles passing through a tough time, twisted in a divot. Arrival upon new unseen territory, forging a new home. The grace of a swan leaving not a splash, scraping up mud for an answer. So it was a real delight to see a poem like that be created in the moment in collaboration and then find its way to a finalist. I'll close with a few last words on this concept of landings and how it impacted me as a poet as well. So my job facilitating and planning this public project also had a really deep impact on my own poetic vision and voice. The concept of landings extends from the land itself to each person's interior and emotional sense of being. We all hold a memory palace of the places that shape our days. The concept of landings also embraces the interior and emotional sense of being in a place of home, safety, or refuge. I notice these layers of inquiry, lyricism, and thought in the youth poems which examined emotions with the delight of a childhood memory of sliding down a slide into a parent's arms to the outcry of injustice at a supposedly random check at SeaTac Airport. One memorable poem mentions the alien intensities of observation. So I'll close this invitation by sharing a poem that I wrote that I feel was deeply inspired by the genius of our youth poets in our region. Places of landing, disembarking before the falls. Landing spaces liminal, water roads infinite. Pebbles and compounded breccia rumble the foot's passage from current to shore. Rivers sustaining memory, old growth hewn and transported in a loose funnel. Chinook salmon migrations, autumnal leaves leaching tannin. The original name for this place is the word for landing a canoe. Thank you very much, and please join me in welcoming my honored colleague, Sierra, a gifted poet and inspired educator who served as youth liaison. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. That was amazing. And I love getting the behind the scenes about different aspects of the Poetry in Public program. And just thank you for your vision and stewardship this whole process. It's been such a delight collaborating with you. And thank you to Stesha and Seattle Public Library and for Culture. Um, I'm going to be wearing a couple of different hats. I'm also obsessed with cephalopods, so maybe this is like my multi-tentacled way of being. Maybe all poets are cephalopods at heart. I kind of think so. So, so I'm going to start with a poem of mine that kind of helps me land and is about cephalopods so that I'd feel delight. Thinking about places of landing, for me, often when I'm in a state of distress and really I can't find a way to kind of get beyond human crisis and I just need a breath, I do think about the existence of like the giant Pacific octopus that are just right off the pier here, that they're coexisting too, and sometimes just shifting into a beyond human, more than human fellow being perspective, just thinking about them coexisting and being there helps me kind of just move into a different possibility. So this poem is called Cephalopod Meditation, and also thinking of places of landing and Ada Limon's anthology, You Are Here, Poetry in the Natural World. So kind of in celebration of all of that, and also just to kind of welcome us here in this expansive here. Cephalopod Meditation. How long have you been hiding from yourself? Coiling inward protectively, squishing yourself into convenient, hard shapes. When they didn't understand how you saw things, did you start to see yourself as they thought you were? Did you forget you could see with more than just the eye? Your whole skin sensing flashes of light and passing shadow, giving and receiving colors like touch. What other parts of you, forgotten, still breathing inside of you? What vulnerable underside is quivering its suction cups? Was this even one of your 3 hearts? How many tears cried and on what scale? What can you discover in what's been discarded, the midden of your past, abandoned shells and carapace? And what have you been clinging to, afraid to let go? Desire moves all muscle with sinuous strength. Did you fear you were some kind of monster? Did somebody call you that? Are you trying to keep it all under control? And how is that going? Have you come to the far edge of the life you've known so far, sensing something in yourself beyond the cold glass? Have you been trying to communicate by chromatophore and gesture, the awkward, beautiful, futile dance of it? Is it all a dance? And what about love? Had you found it before? Did you make a map to try to find it again? We are only here such a short time before interrupted by illness, accident, or subsiding into pale senescence. What if these moments are your last? What are you thinking, making? What are you caring for? What are you tending now to send into the future? What words, what images, what hope? Tucked into small, fragile vessels like messages in a bottle, growing their own chromatophores, secret signal. And how will you be remembered? Okay, now I'm switching to another tentacle. It was such an honor and delight to be the youth liaison, so helping to put out the word to youth writers and to collaborate on some of the workshops that happened at the Redmond Old Firehouse Teen Center, White Center Community Community Center, and then Laura led those lovely workshops in North Bend. And we'll also get to hear from some community readers who also helped with the Poetry in Public celebrations and the workshops as well. So helping to seed the inspiration that led to just the amazing youth poems that we get to see, just a selection of in part of the Transit Poetry in Public. So just to get a little glimpse of some of the magic, we got to hear one of those collaborations. So this is another way of kind of weaving in more youth voices too. I pulled just lines across many, many different youth poems that were featured on light rail and buses. So this is my cento or cento, if you're feeling more Italian about it. So none of the words are mine, but just borrowing these lines and weaving them together in a new way, glimpses of these youth poems. In a city's vibrant tone, the sound's gentle hum, tomorrow's grocery list, rain softly beating on your head, gently lapping water and creaking wooden docks, sharp gravel crunching beneath my shoes, y a veces canciones de amor en español. I'm hurtling forward, darkness rattling windows, the rush of late night commuters. A landing is like a fine line between floating and falling. Displacement, what a heartbreaking melody. For when my eyelids close and my heartbeat slows, me encuentro con mi mamá cocinado, the moon's soft guiding grace, lugar de baile, heels clicking, steps echoing as I run to meet someone, a leaf dancing lightly on the water, a feather slowly falling down. Quiet here is nowhere else. Think about the ocean sound, thrown to the will of the wind, landing in my mother's arms, a smooth, cool feeling. So I'm like, yay, youth poets. Okay. So now I'm so excited to introduce the first of our community readers. So all of these 4 featured readers were part of the Seattle Arts and Lectures Youth Poet Laureate program. So we'll get to hear from them, and then we'll open into a community reading time after that. So our first reader is Weiwei Li. Weiwei Li was the 2019-2020 Seattle Youth Poet Laureate, a graduate of Nathan Hale High School and of University of Washington. Her collection of poems, In the Footsteps of 1,000 Griefs, was published with Poetry Northwest. Though she started writing around age 8, she only began writing poetry at 14, but she's fallen in love with it and hasn't stopped. In her work, she hopes to pay tribute to both Taiwan and America and to do them proud. Weiwei shared, the Central Branch Library is special to me in part because I spent 4 years volunteering there, but also because I was supposed to be part of an event there during my YPL tenure that never happened due to COVID. So we're coming full circle. I'm so glad that Weiwei gets to read here now at this downtown branch. So please welcome Weiwei.
All right, I gotta adjust this because I'm short. Hi, folks. Thank you all so much for coming and spending time with us on this sunny Saturday to enjoy poetry. I'm really happy that you are all here. I want to give a shout out to the unit that I used to volunteer with, which is the friend shop up on the 3rd floor that sells secondhand books as well as a lot of independent artist stuff. So if I can encourage you to go there, I think my old supervisor would be very thrilled to see all of you. So this first poem I'm going to read is, it doesn't have a title. I refer to it as a grounding, ungrounding poem because it was built around the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 mindfulness exercise, which asks somebody to list 5 things they can see, 4 things they can feel, 3 things they can hear, 2 things they can smell, and 1 thing they can taste in order to ground themselves in the moment. So this was read actually for the first time at the 3rd Spice Bridge Community Arts Event Evening back in 2023 down in Tukwila. One thing you can't taste. Your grandmother's cooking. She's Hakka and heavy-handed with salt, oil, and brine. but you can't help missing the taste of childhood. Your own cooking, even oversalted, isn't the same. Two things you can't smell: incense smoke and citronella spray mingling in midsummer, when you feast ancestors and lonely ghosts, but would rather not have mosquitoes feast on you. The wool of your late grandfather's old suits in your grandmother's closet. You know his scent, even if you never knew him. Three things you can't hear: the swallows twittering in their nests next door, the sepia-toned sound of your neighbor playing keyboard in the afternoon, the howl of wind and lash of rain against the windows during typhoon season. It used to scare you until you didn't know how to live without it. Four things you can't touch: the aerial roots of banyan trees rustling gently in every breeze, the rough stone snouts of carved lions guarding your local temple, the great round belly of the laughing Buddha statue in your grandmother's parlor. Rub here for luck. Your grandmother, bird-boned, always sturdy until she wasn't. Five things you can't see: the sun spilling down from on high through the skylight of your childhood home, the fluff of bombax floating by on spring currents, poinciana blooming fierce and red over your sister's head as she receives her first white doctor's coat, new silver streaks in your father's hair, and your grandmother's final resting place in a box, they say, of white jade. Five things you can see: the spread of Seattle skyline, the Ballard Bridge from the top floor of the Hans Rosling Center, Bellevue across the water through a camera lens when the day is clear, the mountain if it's out. Above you, the metal lattice of the downtown library. Before you, an audience at a poetry reading. Four things you can touch: dumpling skins and dumpling filling at a friend's house for New Year's, the glossy cover of your first published book, sea smooth rocks on a beach, some with kelp, some not, cold in the lapping surf or hot under baking sun, fresh fallen snow. You're 23 and still fluff around in it every chance you get, like a puppy, like a child. Three things you can hear: the bus driver who shouts, "Have a great day, go have some fun," at every stop, every morning. Your coworkers' chatter shot through with laughter on a night out as one of you spills their drink again. Your best friends talking over each other on the phone, the best sound in the world. Two things you can smell: always, always coffee, espresso and fresh roasting beans. And on the way to class, pine and evergreen, if you turn the right direction, if you choose the right path. One thing you can taste: braised pork rich with wine and spice. It's far from your grandmother's recipe, but it counts for something that you made it yourself. So this next poem is it's technically a love letter to the Pacific Northwest, which I don't think I've written in all my years here. I did it on the bus across the bridge from Seattle to Bellevue when I was going to work at 6 in the morning. I love you, your indecisive misting rain, your haunted winters, the snow when we get it, that powdered sugar blessing. The way your mountain ranges flirt, now you see me, now you don't, in the blue-white fog. Your butter gold summers and all the green, lush and lively, getting us lost in it. Your critters, the squirrels and rabbits and bold curious crows, though I'll admit I'm less a fan of the coyote that stared me down on campus once. Your lakes and waters, a different shade each day, calm and shining like a mirror or tumultuous in storm. I love you because, and I love you despite, and I'm never sorry I came here, even though I missed so much, even though I miss so much. After all this time, I still maintain the sun is a different shade than it is back home. Thank you.
That was so beautiful. Thank you. Next, it's my pleasure to announce Saya Pham. Saya was the 2023 and 2022 Seattle Youth Poet Laureate. She is an alum of the University of Washington. Phem's debut book, Love Like, is a meditation of all of love's forms and all the ways love touches our lives: connection, family, lineage, history. In addition to poetry, she's also pouring her creativity into the development of a game called Mood Room that combines mental health tools with immersive game design. Thank you, and join me in welcoming our next poet.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be here, and you all look lovely today. I think this is an amazing place to land. And honestly had a pretty difficult relationship with poetry lately because I'm beginning to understand that I don't think everything worth experiencing in life can always be understood through literature or through words. Not literature, I suppose, but just articulating the things that we feel is incredibly tough. But I think that poetry is a really brave attempt at capturing all of the things that we go through as human beings. And so I think that it's an attempt that's worth pursuing. On that note, in writing about the themes of landing, I also thought about the idea that in order to land somewhere, you also have to depart. You have to give up something of yourself, of the place you came from. Everything in life is an opportunity cost. Oh no, I'm talking economics. But it's a sacrifice, like my family sacrificed to leave our country and to come here, or the sacrifice of giving up one dream for another, the sacrifice of knowing that we always have choices in life and we can always reach for the darkness or we can reach for the stars. And I think that it gives me a lot of hope being here and seeing us reach collectively for the stars. And that's something that I want to always do in my lifetime here. And so it really is very meaningful that we, even though everything can feel like it's breaking, that when we start putting words together, that something more can rise out of that. So I have a departure poem, I suppose. It's an older poem from before, but I think that it always resonates with me because I think of it as being in motion and trying to navigate uncertainty. Okay, it's called Be Not Afraid of Water. And this is how I love, breath for breath, like waves crashing and water rising, tides. Be not afraid of loving, of people watching, because how I love is laughing, sitting side by side and saying nothing, but still feeling, even if love's raining, if love's pouring, if love's looking for love and love's flowing out from under us. If love's acquitted and alone by the poolside, fingertips gracing the surface like a bent dive, you will swim side by side. You will survive. Light and shadow sodden, you will give breath, and you will take breath away. You will become breathless. Besides, a body of water is only a body until it livens to become lover. When you learn to be unafraid of water, you will become bolder. You will not sink beneath the riptide. You will learn to love falling in like synchronized swimming. Is like staring into empty abyss, is like diving in the deep end. Love until your breath begins pouring. You will keep swimming. Life is the space suspended between the ledge and the ocean bed, breath for breath. Lungs surfacing, is laughter lifting, puddle shallow enough, be not afraid of breaking. Love's surface is the only way to remind your breath to breathe again. Thank you. This next poem is a poem in progress because I don't feel that I've ever quite landed. I still figuring out who I am, as I think all of us are. I think life's work is never undone, and I think that everything is just a continuation. So I hope to finish this one day, but I thought I would share at least a raw. I think it's fun to share a raw, like a draft. I mean, we're all raw, uncooked. Okay, let's. So this one is also unnamed. I never thought I could let go and land outside the body. On a beach at the end of the world, under a cut up sky, I ran barefoot through the fray. And in the forest, I became a bird. When the stars rained, I closed my eyes until the darkness folded into flowers. There are things I don't say because I don't know how to say them. So instead, I fall asleep to the ocean sounds of a perfect summer. In my dreams, I ring out all the things I am so afraid of. Did you know almost everything made was born from the imagination of human beings? So that all this is to be continued, so we can wake up and carry our dreams home. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness. Amazing readings. Our next reader is Mateo Acuna, Little Shell, Chippewa, and Quechua heritage. Mateo is a poet, writer, and artist, a Peruvian American. He is currently Auburn's Poet Laureate, the 2023-24 Seattle Youth Poet Laureate, and a member of the Washington Youth Arts Leadership Cohort. His work has appeared in Saxifrage and Creative Colloquy. He was a librettist at the Seattle Opera Creation Lab program, and he developed a 20-minute opera called The Legend of the Ayar Brothers, an Andrean legend his father told him growing up that depicts how the Inca Empire was founded. His chapbook, Dear Spanish, is a tender exploration of the languages of identity, gender, and family. Please welcome Mateo Acuna.
How y'all doing? Yeah? Okay. Good. Okay. So I'm currently the Auburn Poet Laureate. I'm working on a manuscript about Auburn's settler colonial history. And I think I'll start out with it's an erasure of a prologue to a book celebrating Auburn's 100 years of like existing. And it had a lot of like problematic language and things that I just personally didn't agree with, but I kind of blocked out parts of the text and kind of turned it into my own thing. History, whoa, okay. History remembered our future as a place annually threatened, a frontier. Today, we rough this city, ring and the whistle of industry, an inviting crossroads. Early settlers found, today's newcomer finds equal opportunities to center and form the everyday occurrences of yesterday. Today, we maintain the ideas of our ancestors. For the future of our children, we approach history. This is another erasure that is based on a poem that's called The Deserted Village. It was written in 1775 by Oliver Goldsmith, and the first phrase is Sweet Auburn, loveliest village of the plain, which is how Auburn got its name. And there are 36 different cities named Auburn, and all ultimately come from this one poem. And this Auburn in the poem isn't a real place, it's an imagined place. So it's very like interesting how a fictional idea that comes from a poem and things that sometimes we don't think have impact actually lead to like life imitating art, right? So, but this is a version about like my Auburn. The deserted village. Sweet Auburn, loveliest village of the plain. We lent labor. Was it paid? Dear lover of innocence and ease, seat of my youth when every sort could please. How I loitered over thy green, where humble pines endured each scene. How often have I paused on every harm, the sheltered cot, the cultivated farm, the failing brook, the busy mill, the church atop the neighboring hill, the hawthorn bush beneath the shade, age and whispering overmade. How often have I blessed the coming day, toil lent its turn to pay, the village train from labor free, led to eat the spading tree, we man a time circled in shade, the young tending, the old surveyed. When man gambled over the ground, and sleights of art and feats went round. And as each peated pleas tired, seating ports the mirthful band inspired, an air that imply sought renown by holding a other down. These were thy harms, sweet village, sports like these, with sweet succession taught even oil to please. Thy bowers cheerful shed, these were thy harms, but all these harms are fed. Clearing and grading the ground, created began the yard, begot the train, lone pipeline open flower of the West, floating lotus on Little Seuss Creek, circa 2025. Ready for structure, the ground arched for structure, said the grid. Part and arrow the people, said the bow. U.S. Army uniforms, circa 1980. Swastika armband, circa 1940. Items for sale at Auburn's Antique Marketplace, circa 2024. A roundhouse was built around the turntable of circa, a minor song, an economic boom. The new real estate wasn't really, circa time immemorial. Sold at Denny Cabin circa 1889, then again and again sampled loops of a noose. Fallen trees ring time is an open wound. A plaque at the White River History Museum says the Muckleshoot Reservation was established as a home for the native peoples. It talks in circas. Smokestacks smoke signals, but the train is always moving, so the message is always changing. The record plays its sweet, sweet music, circa, 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 but never reaches the center. So that's kind of a reference to the archival work I've been doing in Auburn, looking at their history and like creating poems in response or against. But now I'm going to move to some nature poems. around the Duwamish area. The Duwamish Green Watershed starts up in Seattle and then goes down into lower South Puget Sound around Auburn, and it was all connected. The river with many children. The Duwamish River is wide, a wanderer with many children, mud flats, marshes, muck, and stuck, the confluence of the black, white, and green, until a map of vertical understanding, a forced course, a flood, a dried up diversion, an opening, a damming, canal of the straightened and the dredged, a reservation, or the shape of longing. A harbor can also be an island. This next poem is based on a photograph. So it's called an ekphrastic when we poets do that. We see art or music that really moves us and we write a response to it. This was a photograph that was taken after one of the many hurricanes in Puerto Rico, and it was commissioned as this art exhibit in Columbia City Gallery called Abya Yala, Indigenous Connections in Latin America. So they paired poets and visual artists up together. I wish I could show you the photo, but I don't have it on me. But you might get a sense of it from this poem. 2 frames. In the orange room of reckoning, I am stain-shaped, like the wide window, my frame sea-bound or splinters or worse. What separates my opening to the ocean is gone. I cannot afford fancy reflection or new pain. My black-packed garbage bags are full and sleepless nights stacked like bricks betray my eyes beneath beauty's peeling plaster. But a little further in my soul, the wind sings the fringe of palm leaves, the lashes of my land, and other songs you've been untrained to hear. Only in spirit now. I'm stranded where I belong, while you make a vacation of my exile. Go on, smile and spend your money. You take your pictures, and I'll take mine. Okay. This last one is about forest conservation efforts and kind of this idea that nature is fading, or that it's something to be protected. And while I do agree with that, I also think that we kind of think of nature as passive when it's a very active entity. So this is kind of an embodiment of some of the nature around here. Reclamation. Find me where the salt meets fresh water, where the tide meets tide flats, plates of clams and oysters. Find me in the mosaic, grass-stained, an island among friends. Find me in beds of eelgrass, dreaming with the shorebirds, swimming with the salmon, and spawning with the heron. Find me in the cloudy haze or particular sediment, in the diluted or secluded, in the city or the country, in the mills or the marshes, in the false forest of natural longing, turning and returning. The mistake is to think I was already lost. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. Next, Janae Liu is a writer whose work explores the nuances of transition, identity, and self-discovery through free verse poetry and creative prose. She is the 2024-25 Seattle Youth Poet Laureate, a junior at Tesla STEM High School, the chair of the Redmond Teen Advisory Board, and a second-year member of the Seattle Youth Poetry Fellowship. When not writing, she can be found doing endless amounts of homework, overanalyzing Taylor Swift lyrics, and adding to her forever growing poetry collection. Her chapbook, In All Spaces Limno, is forthcoming from Poetry Northwest this summer. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. So the first poem I'm gonna read, I was not really planning on reading, but Mateo asked me if I was gonna read anything from my book. And I realized that I should probably at least try to promote my book, In All Spaces Liminal, coming June 25th. So I chose this poem specifically because it has to do with Seattle, which is obviously my place of landing. I've lived here my entire life in Redmond, so not too far away. So just being in this area. But when I started doing poetry and art, I just naturally kind of gravitated towards Seattle. And it's a city I found a lot of inspiration in. So this poem is called Ode to Seattle. The sun breaks Seattle into shattered shadows. In the bulging city streets twisting, a rattlesnake's fight uphill. We dig our heels into the callous concrete, ready to fall on our hands. We know the smells well, the port's bright brine, the wafts of sewage, and the sweet musk of borrowed books, yellowed from years of sea damp, cool dark in our hands. They sigh, a wonderful release of a long-held breath. This city, this crooked, dirty place, was once the center of a smaller world. I know well this city, my foggy first love, in romantic remembrance, and regretful afterthought, and limb-ripping homesickness. Heartbreak too, I know well. It happens just once, then no other city will ever hurt as much. So this next poem is written in a form called 476, where each stanza ends incomplete and shifts to the next on a pivot word. And then the title, as well as those pivot words, form the final couplet at the end. This one is titled, This, all of this is a gift, and my God, it is one I am. So, here we are. How to tell you, I haven't been the same since the things you do not know about. I almost didn't survive, but my words, I'm not sure if they made it out with me. Do you see it? Do I have enough of them left? My sentences don't flow how they used to. These days they tuck into the tight corners of a bed I will find no rest in. I am slower now, gravity's magnum opus. I am, but I am only a little at a time. So much more careful, so much more grateful is a word that's testing its strength against my lips, a measure with dreams of becoming a chorus. The ways I have choked on myself, but still I am finding so many new ways to sing. Have you ever gotten to tell someone you are grateful they're alive? Have you ever read back your worst, most hopeful words or watching them fight to come true? I felt like I was Atlas, just waiting to be crushed. But now I have the world I was holding up, a better version of it, and eyes, plural, were not enough to see me. They never have been. How many different ways can I find to describe a burial? Unlike most people, I had to watch my own. I participated in it too. When you aren't visible to anyone, You don't think you are there. You stop believing you can be. But when you are visible to the wrong people, you stop completely. For so long after, I could not tell you how I was managing to say I lived. Experiences can heal if they gather enough time. Like these waters we sail, they can be both storm and savior. However hard I searched, my bright, terrible waves never seemed to know where they were taking me. But the ocean floor is not the only place you can go to feel anchored, I promise. I couldn't find it in myself to keep going with strength, but thank God I didn't go at all. I stayed. It was not weakness that brought me to think that living is one of the hardest things I do in a day, and still I do it even now. I have been underwater all my life, but if I could learn to hold myself the way I have held my breath, oh, that is peace I hope to learn, the force of a tempest made resolve. I am the rainbow in the oil spill, a wound that is always in need of pouring, washing out, healing over and over again. Every time I do, this life is what I receive. All of this is a gift, and my God, it is one I am so grateful I live to receive. Thank you.
I'm just going to say, wow. Wow. Let's give our poets one more round of applause. Thank you so much to everybody that read today. We have a little time for an open mic if there are people that feel so moved. And for folks that came in a little bit later, we are just saying, you're welcome to share a piece. We're just hoping people keep it to around 3 minutes. So I see a hand raised. Do you want to share? Wonderful. We'd love that. Thank you. There's a little sign up sheet, but don't worry about it. We're cash.
One second, I wasn't fully intending to read today, so this might take a quick second to pull up. This poem is, oh, thank you. This poem is in progress, but I figure I will read it anyway. Okay. You okay? Yeah. Okay. I have gentle memories of bees, pulling small creatures from children's hair, delicate limbs light enough to be almost unnoticeable before I release them to flight. Touching bugs is easy when they're in motion, alive and vibrant, so small I could extinguish them in an instant. And for this, my heroism is renowned, the classroom so sure of my bravery that when the ceiling panel falls, scattering the empty bodies of 6 black spiders, they know who to turn to. Bugs are easy to touch in motion, but looking at them in death, legs curled above the shells of something that once held life, there's an illogical repulsion inside of me. I still pick them up one by one and drop their sad bodies into the trash. Why am I so afraid of what we leave behind? My ex's cat catches baby cottontails, dead bodies in our hallway that I make her clean up because the stiff feeling of their flesh makes me scream, a noise so sharp and uncontrollable it scares me. 2 times he brings home rabbits that are still alive. 2 times I stick their small bodies in socks, cutting holes where his claws have shredded flesh. Sit with them in the bathtub, using floss and a sewing needle to try to repair what's been broken. One lives for a few days after, dying as infection sets in, while the wildlife tells me they don't take pests. The other kicks their strong little leg and severs their own intestines before I've even finished sewing them up. I can't look at the bodies. Why am I so afraid of what we leave behind? I get my first cat when I'm 12. The vet says she has maybe 10 months to live and offers to put her down for us. She's sweet and demanding. As she grows, we find that she doesn't jump, but rather uses her claws to pull herself onto anything she wants to be on, wobbling and bobbing. She lives years after her original expiration date, howling her way through my turbulent teen years and into my first apartment. The door to the apartment is broken, swings open at random, and she escapes in a determined wobble. But the neighborhood children always bring her home. When she dies, they show me her small, empty shell, and holding it in my arms, I find that I've poured so much love into that body, I could never be afraid of it. I once heard a mortician explain how the assumption of bodies being dangerous immediately after death was an idea manufactured for profit, how sitting with the remains of someone you love can help process the grief of loss. I dismissed the idea, thinking the fear would make the practice more upsetting than healing. And as I hold my cat and say goodbye to what once held her life, I believe it. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other folks want to share? Okay. Oh, okay. I would love that. Yay. Great. We look forward to seeing what's on your phone.
Hello, my name's Hannah. Let's see. Okay, this is called Unrhymed Sonnet. Only missed school when my mother did things like lash my knuckles till the skin split. Spent one such day reading Oliver Twist, bandaged and stiff, drinking organic milk. What did my mother drink as a girl? I could take any hit and still grow to be taller, suckled on the grass-fed teat of empire. Left home but felt no kinship with the happy nor oppressed. Fell behind in classes on poetry and war to tell the crisis hotline how I practiced self-harm. Your pain is the breaking of the shell, wrote Gibran. Yet I slept intact in psych wards the way a rubbled corpse cannot. Suffered in oblivion like a salted slug. Still, I wanted to be good. If I could learn the rough contours of the saline-ravaged earth, if I could rise to crawl again, there and then perhaps my life might finally begin. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other folks want to share? Okay. In that case, thank you all so much for coming. Thank you so much to our poet planner, Laura Day, community liaison, Sierra Nelson, and our wonderful community poets, Janae, Mateo, Saya, and Weiwei. Thank you so much. And to our two brave souls that read during the open mic.